Senator and Republican representative from Virginia, Congressman Eric Cantor. Good to have you on the set with us this morning.
Boy, we have a lot to talk about, Mr. Majority Leader, but let's begin first about the op-ed you wrote about Israel and what's going on. The Wall Street Journal had an editorial a couple of days ago where they were quoting Henry Kissinger saying, in a guerrilla war, if the guerrilla fighters don't lose, they win. Right. And if the conventional forces don't win, they lose. That pretty much does it. I mean, Hamas is much stronger today than they were last week.
I mean, that's the concern. I mean, I think all of us were glad to see the fighting stop, at least for the interim. But the real concern is whether it'll happen again and what condition is Hamas in. And we know that the reports have indicated that Iran continues to ship long-range rockets into Hamas, into Gaza for Hamas's use, and obviously to rain terror on innocent Israelis. So, at the end of the day, we've got to look to where our ally Egypt is going to fall in line.
So let me stop you right there. The president said a month ago he didn't know whether Egypt was our ally or not. Is Egypt our ally?
Well, we'll see. Again, Mr. Morsi was very active in talking with the Israelis and Hamas and involved in the ceasefire. But I think it is up to him now to demonstrate that he is going to stand with us, going to honor that peace treaty with Israel that is so important to U.S. interests in the region, and actually facilitate what all of us would like to see there, which is freedom for more Egyptians.
Publicly, Morsi seemed clearly to be siding with Hamas in that conflict. Was he just playing for a certain element in Egypt? Because behind the scenes, he was working with us to broker a peace.
Well, you got to assume that he is of the Muslim Brotherhood Party. It is a party steeped in some of the very, very anti-Western, anti-American ways. Hamas has the same roots. So it is a political situation for Mr. Morsi where it's very challenging, but we look to him to be a leader and come down on the side of freedom and to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state in the region. And that's what we're going to look for, especially when he is coming to the White House, which will come to Congress to look for taxpayer aid for Egypt.
All right, Congressman Cantor, let's to the Grover Norquist pledge question. Some key Republicans have said they would break it. Where do you stand on this?
Mika, there's a lot that has been said about this pledge, and I will tell you, when I go to the constituents that have re-elected me, it is not about that pledge. It really is about trying to solve problems. And as we know, this election that we just went through was very much about, number one, what are we going to do to reclaim a momentum in this economy? How do we get us back to that? And two, how do you solve a problem? And so if right now the question is, how do you do that? Well, John Boehner went to the White House 10 days ago and said, hey, Republicans in the House are willing to put revenues on the table. That was a big move, right? And we said we're going to do that in the name of trying to fix the problem, to respond to the electorate that re-elected this president. But at the same time, we say we weren't elected to raise taxes. Right. We want to go and help people get back to work.
So is it safe to say that there might be a scenario in which that pledge would not apply, or that it might be put to the side for compromise?
Mika, I haven't talked to Grover Norquist, so I don't know what he wants to or not want to do with his pledge. What I know is the constituents that I represent, and I believe most American people, want to see, number one, more jobs created. And let me tell you a story that I think is relevant to this question. I was in Missoula, Montana during the campaign, and I met a gentleman who had taken a job as a cook in an airport restaurant. And he told me, please fix this problem because I want to get back to my profession, which was construction in the real estate industry. He said, please, we need more jobs. I need to go back to where my skill set is best used. So the question here on marginal tax rates, right, is does that help them get back into a position? And what I would say is, if there's a small business person out there in Montana, if you're saying to him that you're going to raise taxes, that will be less money in his pocket to hire this gentleman away from being a cook and back to the profession he wants so he can make the kind of money he's looking to make. So that's number one. And number two, we as Republicans in the House, we're coming to the table having put very specific ideas on into the debate about how you fix the spending problem. That we have to do, because I don't care if you raised taxes 100% on the wealthy. You're not going to fix the deficit problem.
That's true.
We've got to have the president step up and say, here's my position on how we reform the entitlements and start managing down this debt and deficit.
And that really goes, John, to the president's comments about how it has to be a balanced approach. Yep. More tax revenue, but also they've got to tackle entitlements. I guess the question is, how does Barack Obama get Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and the Democratic caucus to meet halfway on entitlement reform?
Well, that is a question, certainly, and I think that the Democrats were as unhappy in part of the Democratic caucus when the grand bargain negotiations took place 2 summers ago. There were Democrats who were as unhappy as parts of Majority Leader Cantor's caucus were about the revenue side. And one of the questions I want to ask you was, you made the point that it's a big deal for Speaker Boehner to have put the notion of new revenue on the table. So what's changed in your caucus and your caucus's outlook in a fundamental way since the summer of 2011, when the notion of new revenues was, for a lot of your members, totally verboten, would not consider it, would not talk about it? Now, what's changed? I mean, I know the election actually occurred, but what's changed in those districts where a lot of those people got reelected, having not changed their position at all? What's the calculus that's different now for your guys and gals?
I think a lot of it has to do with, we were reelected to fix problems. We were not reelected to raise taxes or increase marginal rates. We were elected to fix the problems, to get the economy going again, and to fix the deficit. Well, the president got reelected, and we know at the end of this year, taxes are going up on everybody. Everybody, rich, poor alike. We have marginal rates across the spectrum going up, as well as cap gains, dividends. We have AMT, death tax, everything. This is the so-called fiscal cliff, right? So we know that is reality. The operation of the statute will, by law, make these rates go up. That's what's changed. We know that. So why would we want to punish folks to see their taxes go up? So that's why...
Just to cut through it, if you do nothing, taxes go up on everybody.
Everybody. And we do nothing to fix the problem. So again, even if all those taxes go up, and we know it's like a $4 trillion item over 10 years, well, remember, how much are we spending more than we're taking in each year over $1 trillion? So even if you raise all those taxes, it does not fix your problem, which is, again, that's what's changed, the operation of the statute. So we're trying to actually make things better and say, let's take this opportunity to come together to fix the spending problem, which is why we need both Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, and the president to come forward and say, hey, here are our ideas.
Mike.
So you say correctly, you point out correctly that you were elected to fix problems. Whether it's Missoula, Montana, or Richmond, Virginia, people want jobs, people want to go back to work. So the largest problem that we have, clearly, I think in your eyes, is probably the size of the federal deficit and our spending issues in this country. How do you fix those problems without, whatever you want to call it, widening the revenue stream, imposing new taxes? How do you fix that problem minus new taxation?
Well, again, increasing marginal rates versus more revenues is the distinction there. We fix the problem by, number one, getting a handle on these entitlements, healthcare especially, and you were just talking about this on the prior segment. But we also can fix this problem by additional growth. And again, that's where you come back in and have to ask the question, in your quest to try and meet the president's desire to raise taxes on the so-called wealthy, is that going to be constructive to help growth return?
But of course, Eric, again, I mean, Republicans have already put new taxes, more revenue on the table, whether you're talking about raising the marginal rate or whether you're talking about closing loopholes. So that's on the table. So the question now is, what does that mean? Does that mean Steve Ratner, I don't know if you saw Steve Ratner's piece, a great piece yesterday, where he talked about a lot of different things about closing loopholes. There are a lot of different ways to skin this cat to get to $1 trillion, $1.2 trillion. Let me ask you a question that is as a Republican, I think we have to face. You know, we came in 94. I don't know if you know it, I was in Congress. But we came in 94.
He doesn't like to talk
But
about
there was a split, Eric, because, you know, I was from the South, just like you, a Republican from